I've been shooting on Lumix cameras since 2016. And from owning a multitude and working with a ton of different cameras since then, I still am going back constantly to Lumix cameras. So in this video, I'm breaking down why I actually recommend Lumix cameras over Sony and Canon. Before I dive into why I absolutely love Lumix cameras and why I personally recommend them so much, let's get into 4 things you should consider. The first thing is budget. What is your actual budget? What are you willing to put into a camera? If you aren't willing to put $1,000 into a camera, you might as well just start filming on your phone and you'll probably be good enough as is. Secondly is, what do you need? Do you need photo and video? Do you need just photo or do you need just video? A lot of different cameras have different purposes. If you just need a video first camera, there's also considering getting Blackmagic cameras and getting more cinema focused cameras as well. Thirdly is buying a camera that you can grow into. Now, what I mean by this is looking at cameras that have specs that you don't necessarily need right now, but something that you potentially will need in a year or 2 years from now. And then lastly, getting the right camera for the right job. And some cameras are specifically made for one specific job, and some can just do kind of all of them really, really well. Now let's get into why I actually recommend Lumix so much. The first reason is the color profiles. Vlog and Vlog L, but mostly Vlog, is an absolutely stunning color profile. On top of all of that, Panasonic and Lumix has a ton of different normal color profiles like natural and Cinelike D as well, and even in some of their cheaper camera bodies like the Panasonic G7. These color profiles are just super easy to work with. Now, one thing to note is Canon does have some great color profiles like C-Log, but there's different variations of C-Log in different cameras, and some of their normal photo/video hybrid cameras don't offer the same C-Log profiles like their cinema cameras, so it makes it a little bit harder to match. Then there's Sony, which personally I've never been a fan of S-Log 2 or 3, and it's just kind of been more of a hassle to color grade or color match with other cameras, and the skins tend to look really, really green. The second reason is value for money. Now, what I mean by this is Lumix has been known for terrible autofocus for many of years. So what they did in return was put a ton of pro video first and also a ton of great photo features into their cameras to make up for the lack of great autofocus. Now, they have things like waveform, vector scopes. You can also add your own custom LUTs into this camera. It has shutter angle instead of just your shutter speed. There's other things like internal Apple ProRes, no overheating, and also open gate, which, going on to my third reason, is open gate or full sensor recording. Now, this isn't a completely brand new thing. Lumix cameras has been known for having really great anamorphic mode settings, but now with open gate or full sensor recording, you're able to record horizontally and vertical videos shooting in a 4:3 or a 3:2 aspect ratio on their camera systems. My fourth reason is just better overall menu systems. Now, I've shot on some Sony cameras and I've also shot on some Canon cameras, and their menu systems tend to be overly complicated and confusing. One of the best menu systems on cameras, in my recommendation, is Blackmagic cameras have the best camera menu settings out there, but Lumix is also just really easy to understand. For example, if you're in video mode, all your photo mode settings don't even show up, and it's honestly such an intuitive, easy layout system, and it's also matches all the other camera systems, so it's easy to go between different cameras from them and be able to tell what's going on really quickly. My fifth reason is lenses and lens adaptation. Now, since Lumix just finally got into the full frame market, some of their full frame lenses aren't that vast and wide, but one of the great things is being able to adapt a ton of different lenses. On their Micro Four Thirds cameras, you are able to adapt any lens basically onto their camera systems, and on their full frame, you can adapt to EF and PL mounts, and I believe a couple other ones. But The fact that you can just adapt a ton of lenses doesn't mean you have to be married to one lens system like Sony, for example, or Canon RF lenses. You can have a ton of different lenses and variety when shooting on these cameras. My sixth reason is the autofocus improvements. With the recent release of the S5 II and the S5 IIX, which I did an entire review video right here on, the autofocus features have immensely caught up to Sony and Canon just in their version 1 firmwares. This being their first version of phase detect autofocus and just being just slightly behind Canon and Sony, that only means that Lumix will just slowly, constantly improve and update this autofocus system, catching up if not surpassing these other camera systems. Now, reason 7 is the cinema video features. This is similar to what I mentioned already, but having things like shutter angle, waveform, vector scope, being able to input LUTs into this camera to show your false colors. This is just absolutely beast for having professional video features that are similar on normal cinema cameras as is. And the last reason I strongly recommend Lumix cameras is creators being valued. Now, I know Sony and Canon also value a ton of their creators as well, but being a part of the Lumix backstage creator team and being able to collaborate with Lumix themselves on projects has been absolutely such a huge blessing. And the fact that my voice is heard from the creators, my voice is heard from the team, being able to collaborate with a ton of other Lumix creators and having this little community of content creators who all love and shoot on Lumix cameras makes you feel extremely valued by the company themselves, and they hear your voice when you have recommendations or you're trying to just have small improvements happen over time. With that said, there is still a couple issues currently with Lumix that I hope will get improved over time. The first one is autofocus again. Now, the fact that they just released this autofocus with the phase detect in their newest full frame cameras still makes me a little bummed out as a mainly micro four third camera shooter on the GH6s. Not having great autofocus on these cameras does limit me a lot of the time. Even though I shoot mostly on manual cinema lenses, it's something that I would really hoping that they improve over time with the next run in line of micro four third cameras they are releasing. Another big issue, at least with their full frame cameras on the S5 II and IIX, is having crop 4K 60 frames a second. The main issue I have with this is when you are switching between 24 frames and 60 frames a second, or even 30 frames or 24 frames and 48 frames a second. If you're on a 35mm lens and you want to shoot 24 frames a second and switch to 60 frames a second, you essentially just went to a 35mm to a 50mm lens. My third issue is lenses, sort of. Though I said earlier, there's a ton of lenses currently right now, and they're slowly growing their system. Currently right now, at least for their full frame line, the lenses is not a huge collection in comparison when you are looking at Canon or Sony. Now, they do partner up with a ton of different cameras like Sigma, for example, to make more lenses, and as time goes on, there's just going to be more and more lenses available. Though with that said, you can shoot on a micro four third camera and basically use any lens with the speed booster on that as is right now. My last issue with this right now is there's no really higher end dedicated cinema cameras. Now, I know they have their box cameras that they've released a couple years ago, and they also have the Panasonic EVA1, I believe is what it's called, but they haven't released one of these type of cameras in a decent amount of time. I would love it if they took the GH6 or the S5 IIX and whatever next camera they made it in an FX3 style cinema camera system that has a ton of screws and is just a video focused first camera and just forgot all the photography on its own, and it was just a video first camera and didn't look like a photo camera, which isn't a huge issue. It's just, I guess, a little bit of a gripe, but nonetheless. Now, some final thoughts is I highly recommend Lumix cameras. I've been shooting on them for the longest time, and I personally find them just the most pleasurable to find, but in the end, I still recommend buying the right camera for the right job. If you need a camera that has absolutely insane autofocus, or if you need a vlogging camera, or if you need an action camera that can go underwater, it just depends. Whatever your needs are, buying a right camera for the right job is what I would recommend first, and then buying some camera that you can obviously grow into. I bought the GH6 and I have the S5 IIX, and I'm not shooting on Apple ProRes RAW or Apple ProRes internally right now, but I can in the future, which is really, really cool and neat, that I can slowly grow into cameras as I start progressing my career further and further along. I don't need all of these settings at this given moment. And lastly, my final thought on this entire video is any camera you buy right now is going to be absolutely amazing and incredible. Your phone in your pocket could shoot 4K. You can do almost anything with any camera nowadays, and you probably won't be disappointed with the quality you're getting out of any camera you buy now. Anyways, I know it's been a long video, so if you made it to this part of the video, comment race car spelled backwards is race car in the comments below. And if you want to see another video, I did an entire video talking about the Lumix S5 IIX versus the GH6. You can check out that video right here, and YouTube recommends you should check out this video right here. Until next week, guys, peace.